Okay, I am so excited. I've been looking forward to this recording for so long. Natasha and Justine from Two Black Girls, One Rose are here. You guys, welcome to Seeing Other People.
Hey, Lana. Thanks for
Hi.
having us.
I want to know like every single detail about why you guys started talking about reality dating shows on a podcast, on social media, in the way that you do. Obviously, like we all have our group chats with our friends or have like a specific friend we watch a specific show with, but you
Mhm.
guys take it so far beyond that and you're helping everybody like learn so much from each of these shows and each person on each show. So would love just kind of your backstory of how this happened.
Yeah. So, Justine and I have been friends since high school. We've known each other the
Mhm.
past 15, 16 years. The story goes we were bonded through Laguna Beach in high school. Justine had the
Love.
DVDs. Yes. She had the DVDs. She'd bring them to school. I'd like meet her up in the lounge. We'd watch it and like talk about it. So, we've been watching TV and talking about it for quite some time.
Mhm.
But yeah, we kicked off the podcast with The Bachelor. I've always kind of watched The Bachelor. It's always been a guilty pleasure show of mine. Literally remember watching the first season. Justine used to watch like
I used to watch the last 2 episodes to see who would cry and who would maybe be on Dancing with the Stars, which was at the time
That's
one of my
funny.
favorites. Yeah.
yes. But yeah, Rachel Lindsay, she was the first Black Bachelorette. She was named. I was
Mhm.
like so hyped for this. Justine and I had our own little tradition of getting together every Monday, watching Rachel's
Mhm.
season, drinking wine, and then I'd stay over her apartment till like 2 o'clock in the morning. We'd still be talking about the show and just like making each other crack up. And then yeah, we also started to listen to because I think we were both so in love with Rachel Lindsay that we were like, we
Mhm.
just want more content. So started listening to other Bachelor podcasts covering her season and just felt like they were watching a different show. They just really
Mhm.
weren't capturing the nuances of this Black woman's journey for love. And so thought maybe we can start our own podcast and give it a whirl. And so we started off with Ari's season of The Bachelor, which I mean, he's like the whitest man on earth. So it's like such a stark difference from Rachel Lindsay.
And what you were like really planning to do. Yeah.
Exactly. But nonetheless, we just had like great conversation. We had a lot of fun. And we've covered a ton of Bachelor content, but obviously we've dove into other dating reality shows, Love is Blind, Married at First Sight, and really just seeing like what these popular shows are teaching us, if anything, about dating. Love is Blind is one of those shows that has such a chokehold on all of us when it's on
Mhm.
TV. We're all dedicating hours and hours of our time watching it and then consuming so much content around it and continuing conversation. And it's like, if we're going to be doing all of this, I hope I can learn something. I hope I can take away something about modern dating or relationships or love, or kind of look into my own life and see like, what can I learn from these shows, or what do I see of myself through these shows? And so that's kind of the angle that we take with our recaps, is having fun conversation, but then also seeing if there's anything that we can take away and apply into our own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is really interesting to look at it from a perspective of, okay, what are we actually taking away from this? It's clearly, if you're spending so much time watching something like that, it is going to have an impact on you. And if it's a
Mhm.
dating show, it's going to have an impact on how you date. And so I think it is a really cool concept and really great what you guys are doing, which is actually looking at how could this possibly be affecting us? Like some of
Mhm.
this stuff, maybe we
Mhm.
shouldn't be applying to our dating lives. Some of it, maybe we would benefit from. So I'm curious overall, kind of to start, is there one show that you think does a really good job at showing like, okay, this is kind of similar to real life dating
Mhm.
and this is the show we can take away positive learnings from?
I would say Married at First Sight is one that sticks them in their real life the best. I would say they keep their job. Everybody like keeps their like 9 to 5 job for the most part.
Mhm.
They live in their city that they're from, and they also like get to meet their families or not. They make a lot of like choices on their own. They have a lot of autonomy on that show, and I think that shows a lot of what real life dating is like. The unfortunate part is that these people are married.
Right.
while they are
Mhm.
doing this. So that's a little bit extreme. But I would say Married at First Sight, and then honestly, Love is Blind does a pretty good job. And maybe it's the casting that they do, but Love is Blind does a great job. And then another show that me and Natasha both watch, Natasha way more than me, is Ready to Love.
Mm.
Ooh,
Ready
I
to
don't know
Love on
that one.
Own. Ready to
Mhm.
Love on Own is a fantastic show about people
Yes.
between the ages of like 35 and 55 dating, and in such a slow way. Everything is such a slow burn, and that's
Mhm.
real life. You may be talking to somebody for like 3 months. You may be talking to somebody for 2 weeks. Who knows? But they document all the real life stuff and then edit it in to make it interesting. They don't have to like manufacture drama from any other outside producer involvement or anything like that. So I would say those three do a great job.
Mhm.
Do you think there's a difference in, I don't want to say the success potential for a couple coming out of one show versus the other, but I kind of do feel like in this, what's coming to mind for me right now is like Love is Blind. Yes,
Hmm.
they meet, they get engaged, sight unseen, but you do have that period where they do, they meet the families, they go live together, they experience these things, and they have like challenges to overcome together versus, let's say, on The Bachelor, where in 6 weeks you're just kind of living in this little paradise world where you're going on helicopters and there are fireworks at the end of every date and everything is so
Hmm.
magical. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the outcome. Like, are couples more likely to actually end up in a healthy, successful relationship after a show like Love is Blind versus The Bachelor or any other show?
Mhm. I think the biggest difference is on The Bachelor, they're sequestered, they're like off in this fantasy
Mhm.
like bubble. Um, and we've seen over the course of 20 years that not many couples last after that show because there's no real challenge. There's no intervention of family or friends that really poses a challenge to those couples. So I think Love is Blind, which, also the track record is so, but at least we have some married couples, still together in the past, 4 or 5 seasons. With Love is Blind, they have to answer to their families, right? They have to go live in an apartment together. They have to do real life, real world things that force them to really be challenged and have conversations on a deeper level than just like, are you here for the right reasons? So I think that's why we see a difference in kind of like success between those shows. I think it really comes down to the sequestering versus like it happening within real life.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Do you think in any of the producing or even going back to like just, I don't want to say writer's room because it's quote unquote reality television, but do you think they've ever thought like with The Bachelor, like, okay, maybe we should extend this process so that these couples really have a chance to make it out? Like maybe we should put
Hmm.
them in their hometown for, maybe a whole week instead of just a day.
Hmm.
Or like, is the focus really like, let's find Charity or whoever else, like, let's find them their person, or is it like, let's make great television and maybe
Hmm.
they'll end up with someone?
It's very obvious that it's let's make great television. Very, because the formula hasn't changed. And there's so many things they can dip into and do that they choose not to do. They choose to build the fantasy in the same formula that was 20 years ago.
Hmm.
So they just want to make good TV.
Yeah, and I think keeping the fantasy alive, I think that's kind of the
Yeah.
brand of Bachelor as well, is it is a fantasy.
Hmm.
And so we don't want to challenge them too much. We don't want to do much more than just a hometown little visit, because they know once you intervene with family, friends, and things get real, that's when you start to see the cracks show. So I think keeping the fantasy alive is kind of their one and only mission, or else they would have innovated by now.
Yeah. It is interesting how like everything, I feel like everything else changes over time.
Hmm.
And this franchise just has not. I mean, they've tried
Hmm.
different things and they've like gone added things in places, but like to your point, like it's exactly the same as it was when it started. And that's really crazy.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never even had an Asian lead. That's bizarre. That's just
Yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah.
We've never had anyone over a size 6 casted. That's bizarre,
Yeah.
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. It's also shocking to me, like, there's so much out there, like, all of social media is pushing them to do better,
Mm-hmm.
and they have so many chances to, and they still don't.
Yeah,
And
they
it's
choose not
so
to. Yeah.
mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what's really bizarre as well. Like in the age of we're living in the Love is Blind world now, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
is the number one kind of dating show that
Yeah.
has a global reach. It has all of us in a chokehold for the 2-3 weeks it's on TV. We're living in that age now, and still there's like this resistance to innovating, and which is very bizarre because the ratings and the love and the kind of hoopla around The Bachelor, we can all feel is diminishing. And so, not really sure what the game plan is there, but I'm happy that there's lots of other shows we can all watch and is taking over and giving us more. I think more conversations as well. Like when a show is
Mm-hmm.
so based in fantasy, it's hard to have much to talk about.
Right.
Love is Blind is also a very strange social experiment, but even this last season, or I would say even was this 2 seasons ago with Zenub and the whole cuties situation, like
Mm-hmm.
everyone was talking about that. Everyone had an opinion. It had us talking about body image and anxiety, and I don't know how much of those huge kind of conversations, nuanced conversations, we get from a show that's so based in fantasy.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I also just started thinking about, I mean, I feel like there was one really, I think, great conversation that was brought up on charity season between her and Joey about,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like what would this look like if we were to end up dating? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
have never dated a Black woman before. And I thought his like reaction to that, I thought just that conversation
Mm-hmm.
was almost like groundbreaking on this show. And
Mm-hmm.
then it made me think of like the Love is Blind conversation. I forget who it was between, but it was about like, if we were to get pregnant and not be ready for it, like what would we do? I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was really interesting. And I like applaud the show for airing that conversation because they didn't have
Mm-hmm.
to. But I think
Mm-hmm.
like it makes me like almost like proud to like watch sometimes when there are conversations like this, because exactly like, it gets everyone else talking and having conversations that they need to be having.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I think that's kind of the interesting thing about reality television in particular is I think people think of reality TV generally as like lowbrow, kind of like trash content, um, but they do a really good job at creating conversation, and sparking interesting conversations. Because when you're watching the show, unlike watching a scripted drama with reality TV, you are very much kind of putting yourself in the shoes of the participants. So you become almost a participant in the show,
Mm-hmm.
which is very, I think, specific and unique to reality television. So I think it's really interesting when a show is able to create conversation. As you said, I think you're referencing maybe the Bartice, it was Bartice
Yes.
Yeah,
and
Bartise and
Yes.
Nancy. Yep.
Nancy
Yes.
talking about
Mm-hmm.
abortions, and like it's a very deep, kind of uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But yeah, you have to applaud the show for airing it. That's something that they could have left on the editing room floor. I like
Mm-hmm.
to feel and think that in Bachelor World, there's a lot of interesting conversations that they leave on the editing room floor just to
Mm-hmm.
keep it very, PG and squeaky clean for their very white middle class, middle America audience.
Right.
But it is interesting when you see these reality shows are able to kind of spur interesting debate and conversation, and that's what makes these shows so captivating to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a show in particular that you think gives like the worst dating advice? Or it's like if you want to like
Worst.
learn or grow in your dating life in your relationship, like don't watch this show.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Worst. Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think Too Hot to Handle is fun to watch. I don't know if we're really learning much from that
Yeah, you
show.
don't learn
I
anything.
don't think you learn
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
I would even I don't even know if I want to call it a dating show, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So probably that show. Yeah.
I would say if we were going to go even off a little off script for dating reality, I would say Vanderpump Rules. I would say they have some of the worst relationships, friendships,
Mm.
everyone being kind of like Lisa's servant, some may say. And then also, obviously, the romantic relationships are all in deep, deep turmoil. I would say Vanderpump Rules is probably the worst.
I'm I'm partially proud and partially ashamed to say I've never watched it.
Oh, really?
Really? You didn't dive in for this whole
Oh.
Scandalfulness?
No, I
Oh, wow.
didn't, and I know, like, some of my best friends have been obsessed with it. Even I remember, like, I I did a semester of college in LA, and my roommate was obsessed with it, and, like, we had to go to SUR, like, we had to go, and, like, multiple
Yeah.
times to see if anyone was gonna be there, and you would have thought I would have started watching it at that point. I
Right.
never did, and I
Mhm.
really thought about it this time around when
Mhm.
all the drama was happening, but I was like, do I wouldn't even know where to begin. Like, if I
Doesn't
start from
matter.
the beginning, it doesn't
Nope.
matter?
Nope.
Just
Just
you just
No.
start
turn
from
it on?
episode 15, season 10. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I
Okay.
I'd watched since season 1. I've been trying for years to get Justine to dip in. Finally got her dipped in this season for
Mhm.
Scandal, and she started just with this season, and
Just with this
it was
season. Yeah,
fine.
doesn't matter.
They're
Yeah.
not that deep people, so you
Nope.
can you can jump right in.
Mm-mm.
It's what pushed people over the edge.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there anything that you've learned from any show that you've been able to apply to your own dating life or relationships or even
Mm.
friendships?
Yes. There's a show that everyone on earth should be watching. Me and Natasha sing it from the mountaintops.
I was gonna go there too.
Couples Therapy
Yes.
on Showtime,
Showtime.
which I know is now like bought by Paramount Plus. I don't know how that is working now. Showtime got like purchased, I think. By
All I
Paramount
know
Plus.
is I did a free trial of Paramount Plus last week to watch Zoe 102, the movie.
Oh,
And
oh, okay.
as I was scrolling through the menu of like all the different shows and movies they have, I was like, wait, this might be my favorite new streaming service. Like, I'm
Yeah.
fully going to
Yeah.
pay and not end my trial after I watch
Yes.
this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you could watch it now on Paramount Plus, but that show, I watch it as if it is a Super Bowl every single episode. I'm like, he's a narcissist. I mean, I'm chanting at the television, right? And every season there's some huge takeaway that you can take from at least one of the couples. It's a documentary style show with one of the best couples therapists in New York City, Orna, and she's therapizing these people through huge issues. Like, I cheated on him 4 times and he cheated on me back 3 times. What do we do now? We have 4 kids, right? Like that kind of stuff. And so she's dealing with people who are also in New York City. They have these tiny apartments. They live in a 2-bedroom apartment. They got 4 kids, 2 dogs, 3 cats. Like, it's crazy. And the issues that people come with, because it's therapy, because it's only 8 sessions and they know that they're getting the best care they can get, they lay it all out on the table. And recently I was rewatching season 2, and she said about a woman who was really treating her partner to like not very nicely at all, and he loved her so much, almost unconditionally. And he was like, if I bought her an island and I said, let's stay here, she'd still be afraid that I'd get on a boat and row away from her. And Orna said something that changed the way I think about myself. She said, this woman is just trying to control the situations around her because she's been through so much in her childhood that she's trying to self-sabotage just to make sense of the world around her.
Mm.
Actually having stability and having a stable man for her and her children doesn't make sense to her. So she's trying to make sense of the world around her. And when you're an entrepreneur, I'm sure you know, as a podcast host, it can be kind of like daunting to think about growth and numbers and all that stuff. And you have to start dreaming. And it was really hard for me to like dream big with our podcast because of some like self-sabotage old work stuff. And so for her to say that, for Orna, the therapist, to say, it's just you trying to make sense of the world around you, it changed the way I think about myself, how I forgive myself when I'm waking up and trying to manifest $1 billion for Natasha and I. So that's one of the things that I've learned. Long story short, my goddamn.
I am shook right now that I have never heard of this show and that I've never seen it, because it sounds like the best show ever, and it sounds like
it is
actually productive.
It is.
Yes. Couples therapy. Everyone should be watching couples therapy. It's
Everyone.
I think we've had now 3-4 seasons.
3
seasons, I want to
4.
say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I watched couples therapy with my husband,
I was
And
gonna say, like, that'd be a great thing to do with your partner, because think about all
yes,
the conversations that will come from that.
definitely.
Mhm.
It's intense. It's definitely
It's
intense
intense.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you naturally, as you're watching the show, you're putting yourself in the shoes of these couples. So if they're having communication issues, as you're watching, you're thinking about your own communication styles. But it's definitely one of those shows that, like, in between each couple, we're like pausing to like talk, and it's very productive. And to piggyback on Justine, it helps you really to understand how your own behaviors are
Mhm.
often trauma informed, um,
Mhm.
and teaches you a lot about grace, having grace with yourself, having grace with your partner, just the level of like deep understanding you have to have for other people to provide that grace as well. And yeah, I think it's definitely the one show. I mean, it's a reality show, but it's like docu style, like a docu series, so it feels a little bit more highbrow. But the show is led by a couples therapist. So I think that's
Mhm.
one thing that's sometimes missing out of these reality shows is like a host that actually
Mhm.
has the background that can really help these couples. I always say Temptation Island is like one of the wildest social experiment shows, but what I do love about it is their host, this guy Mark Wahlberg, just literally every session or every episode he does like couples therapy or group therapy with these people on this like very crazy show, but he's able to make the show productive, and I think that's something I would love to see in a lot of reality shows.
Mhm.
Kind of piecing that or kind of ripping that off from couples therapy, because I think that's what makes the show so good is the productivity
Yeah.
behind it.
Mhm.
Absolutely, and it's what gives people a chance to work through something.
Mhm.
I mean, even a few
Mhm.
seasons ago, there was a group date on The Bachelor and they brought a therapist in,
Mhm.
and I
Oh,
don't remember
yeah.
whose season it was, but I
Yes.
remember,
Yeah.
like, it was
Mhm.
Genevieve was really struggling in
Mhm.
that conversation with the therapist, and the therapist kind of pointed out, like, she didn't think Genevieve was gonna be able to get there because
Mhm.
Genevieve had, like, a lot she needed to, like, work through first,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and I thought that was, like, I just wish we could see more of that on more shows, because I think that's like, if you want to help people find love, or even the people going on the shows, you want to find love,
Mhm.
there's a lot that you have to do internally first.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
no matter, like, you could meet the perfect person, but if you're not there yet,
Mhm.
it's never going to work.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that I think
Mhm.
is often what we're seeing in a lot of these shows, and why these
Yeah.
relationships don't last is because a lot of these people haven't done the work yet. They just came to find love, but didn't do the self work before.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
it's so interesting to hear about a show like Couples Therapy when you compare it to, like, The Ultimatum, where it's like, oh, well, like, something's not working. You're like, you're not willing to commit. Okay, like, let's go air out all of our grievances and figure
Out
this out
there.
on this show.
Mhm.
Instead of like,
Mhm.
it's you and me working together against the problem. Like, no, it's me versus you.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people go on reality TV instead of going to therapy. You see it a
Yeah.
lot.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
why is this the platform for you to figure out these issues or to break up with your boyfriend or husband or whatever? Like, just go into the therapist chair. Save all of
Mhm.
us this agony.
Also, like, if you're in that not good of a place, why would you ever want the world to see it? Like, your all of your relatives, your parents, friends, like, everyone. Like,
Yeah.
I've in the past when I was single, I did think about, like, "Oh, like, should I just go on a reality dating show because my dating life is hopeless and I have nothing to lose?" But I
Mhm.
thought about it from a sense of, like, well, maybe I could meet somebody. It wasn't like, "Oh, I'm just gonna
Mhm.
go be a disaster on television and maybe someone will like me."
I don't think some people are thinking through it as
Yeah.
No, definitely
as
not.
strongly as you are.
Definitely not. No,
True.
no. I think they have nothing to lose, and they have all the Instagram followers to gain, and so
Yeah.
they're on there,
Yep.
and they're looking,
Yep.
and yeah, having a great time.
Mhm.
That is true. Is there a show that, since you mentioned Instagram followers, is there a certain show you think people go on genuinely to find love versus for the quote unquote wrong reasons as to gain a
Mm.
following?
Mhm. I think Justine mentioned it already, Ready to Love.
Yeah, Ready to Love.
So it's a honestly it's a fantastic show. They had their like celebratory 100th episode where they kind of like recapped all the couples from the season from the over the years, and there was like a shocking amount of couples that were still together. And what makes Ready to Love so interesting is all the cast members are, as Justine said, between the ages of 35 and 55. they are divorced, like they've been divorced or widows. They have kids. They are like fully formed, mature adults who are genuinely going there for love. Usually every season they kind of throw in one little curveball, this one kind of person for TV purposes, but generally everyone there is pretty serious because, as we said, they have a lot to lose. They have kids that they have to introduce. They have family. They have past. They are professionals with their own businesses. They're not trying to go on TV to make themselves look like a fool. And so that's why you see so many successful couples coming from that show. And really, the age, I think, is a huge thing. Age and life experience is
yes,
huge. Yeah.
Yes, you can tell. I just saw a clip of an interview with Francesca from Too Hot to Handle and blah blah blah. So many shows
And everything else.
Everything else. And she was on Sophia with an F's podcast, and she was talking about how she is in a better position than a practicing actor because she can go into any position she wants and she can act however she wants. And I was like, you don't have anything to lose. You are just portraying whatever Francesca you feel like being today so that we buy something from you.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Only somebody single with no kids could do some mess like that.
Yeah. True.
Only. That's it. It's a very limited, narrow space, but a lot of people are fitting in it.
Yeah. It would be so interesting to like go back in time and have a conversation with her like before she went on Too Hot to Handle, and then like everything else, and like her personality, her goals, her values then versus now. It would be
I want to
so
know.
fascinating.
Yes, I'd love to know because she just bought a house. Like, she ain't hurting at all. So.
Yeah. It's I wonder if like I guess maybe not because the Bachelor data Instagram account is focused on Bachelor, but I love to see like an actual chart with like, here are different shows and here are the number of couples that are still together.
Yeah.
She might have done that.
She might have.
She has like pop culture data. She has like a bunch of other Instagrams too.
I'm curious about that.
I might have it.
One thing that just came to mind. Have you guys watched The Circle?
No. That's one I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Watch The Circle. It's not dating, but I do really love it. And what I think is really cool is it's a reality show where, again, like I just said, it's not a dating show, but there have been relationships that have come out of it because it's people like connecting and trying and like forming friendships, and they don't actually meet in person until literally like the finale and the reunion. But there was a season, I think it was 2 seasons ago, this girl, Alyssa, went in as herself, and this guy, John, went in as trying to catfish as his mom. And they throughout the show, like, there are hilarious conversations that this girl Alyssa thinks she's having with like a 65-70-year-old Italian mom. And they met after at the end, and they just like had such a strong like friendship bond as a basis, and they've now been dating for over a year. And I think that is so cool, where it wasn't the intention, but they were putting themselves out there, they were being genuine, and that's something like amazing that came from it, which is, I think it's just really special and cool and different.
Yeah, I've not seen that show. I gotta check in that.
I haven't.
I recommend. If you guys had the opportunity to create your own dating reality show, what would it look like? What would be the thing, or what would be the parameters?
Yeah. A show that we just finished recapping that I loved was Swiping America. It came on HBO Max. We just recapped it on our public feed. And what I loved about that show it was the most true to modern dating reality show that I've seen. They took 4 single New Yorkers, sent them around the country to 8 different cities to date, and they were dating people from swiping apps, which is how we're all dating now. So I really like that show just because it really just showed like the realness of dating, how like most dates are duds. Like most sometimes it takes you a while to craft a text message, kind of like a lot of the banality of dating. So minus all the drama, all the production drama, it was just very true to like what actual people are dealing with in modern dating. And yeah, if I had to come up with my own show, that would be like a very core part of it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what made Swiping America so enjoyable to watch, is by the end you cared less about like who they were going to end up with, and because the show was very low stakes, because dating generally
Mm-hmm.
is low stakes. There was no forced engagement or marriage or whatever at the end that made it feel like an experiment, is also fun to watch, but this show was just very much a literal reality dating show. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it made it really enjoyable. Particularly, I mean, I'm out of the market now, but I can imagine as a single person watching the show just kind of really resonating with the leads because they're dating exactly the way that I'm dating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Justine, what about you?
Yeah. I think the ones that I always come up with like on the fly when we're on the podcast have a lot to do with the Black African American experience. And I think that some things that would be really fun for me to watch, but also for other people who don't experience um, Blackness the same way I do as somebody who is Black living in the Northeast would be a church reality dating show
Mm.
somehow. Get the church involved, or the Divine Nine sororities and fraternities. I think those would be incredible to have. BET has BET and BET Plus. There's plenty of room for this kind of program. I don't know why they don't have it already.
Yeah.
Um, and I stand with SAG AFTRA and everybody else, but when y'all are done, we are ready to go
Call them
because
up.
there are so many opportunities. And I think what makes shows like Indian matchmaking and Jewish matchmaking so good is that they're so culturally relevant. And so
Mm.
we're all
Yes.
not Indian and I'm not Jewish. I'm watching from the outside and I'm hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I'm learning so much about a culture at the same time. Even
Mm.
with Love is Blind, with that conversation that you were speaking about earlier, I thought that was so specific to Texas. Like
Mhm.
people in LA and New York City don't like you poor choice or not. Like it's not even a debate. It's just like it's like a prompt on an
Mm.
app.
Right.
It's not even a debate. It's not even a question.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that kind of specificity I would really love to watch and produce.
Mm.
I do feel like over the last few years, people are so much more open and desire, like they have such a more of a desire to actually learn about different cultures and about
Yeah.
what like someone in this place, what their life is like, what their
Mm-hmm.
dating life is like, what
Mm-hmm.
someone who's this race, this religion. Like I think we've all come a long way in a short time. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much more room to grow and so
Mm-hmm.
much more we have to do on that journey. But I think everyone is really excited to learn right
Mm-hmm.
now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why there is so much room for opportunity. And I would love to watch that show. I would love to watch
Mm-hmm.
both of your shows.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
with the Swiping America mention, that reminds me, and I think it's so interesting, during COVID, maybe right once people started like going outside again,
Mm.
um, this he was like probably 21 at the time. This guy I ended up stumbling upon on TikTok, he decided to do something he called 50 dates in 50 states, where
Hmm.
he had just like graduated college and the job market was weird and he was living at home. So he was like, screw it. I'm going to like get a van and go on a road trip and try and document it and try and go on a date with a girl in every state. And he did
Mm.
it all on Tinder. And he
Oh
showed all
wow.
of these different dates with all these different types of people and what each date was like in, you know, a date versus in Kansas is going to be
Mm-hmm.
very different than a date
Mm-hmm.
in Seattle and a date
Mm.
in New York versus Florida. So
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
that's really interesting. And that's the first thing I thought of when you kind of mentioned the concept of Swiping America.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that is so cool. And I think, you know, this guy probably has like 500,000 followers after his first time doing it because people were felt so connected to it. Like you
Yeah.
said, like
Mm-hmm.
this reminds me of me and I
Mm-hmm.
can see myself fitting in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of dating shows, maybe not The Bachelor. The Bachelor does a good job of like casting kind of like middle America, I guess, people.
Yeah.
But most
Mm-hmm.
dating shows are very much aligned to the coasts. So,
Mm-hmm.
New York, LA, like, Miami. So it is interesting. Watching Swiping America was really interesting to see what is dating like in Asheville. What is in Asheville,
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina? What is dating like in Santa Fe? Like, I have no alliance, no like people at
Yeah.
all in those regions. And I think we've seen dating in New York on many different ways, many different shows.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, a show that definitely gives us access to those people's experiences and those communities is really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I have a few quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
Let's do it.
First and foremost, is love blind?
Oh my god.
Oh wow.
No. No, I don't think
I
so.
yeah. I
Mm-mm. Love? Nah. Yellow Island.
yeah, no.
I love that you're
No.
so sure of it, but
No.
Natasha's like trying to
I'm
say
trying
no.
yeah, I'm trying to piece together I
We can hear
think
both sides. Let's hear both sides
yeah.
of the coin in your brain.
I think to an extent Love is Blind. I think we have seen on Love is Blind in particular people literally falling in love through a wall.
Mhm.
And then where the trouble comes afterwards is then piecing together the physical with the emotional. But you can't deny that the feelings that they had, the emotional connection, that love feeling
Mhm.
before seeing that person was real.
Mhm.
So that's why part of me is thinking like, yeah, I do think Love is Blind. I where I hesitate is physical attraction is super important. And so that oftentimes does trump. I
Mhm.
think recently a friend of mine, she had never seen Love is Blind. So I was watching season 1 with her. And we were watching Jessica and what was his name?
Mark.
Jessica and Mark full on fell in love, and then she saw Mark's
Mhm.
face and his 5'6"
Mm.
stature, and she was like, she just couldn't piece the two together. So that's where it gets complicated. Like, is it blind? Because
Yeah.
suddenly her love became conditional. Now she
Mhm.
can't wrap her love around that face and that height.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm a little torn on that question.
I
Mhm.
wonder if part of that comes down to like the time that she was in the pods, she was creating an image of him in her mind.
Definitely.
And so when
Yeah.
he was so far from that image versus if, you know, maybe had she known his hair color and his height before and was
Mhm.
able to like work off of that and have that in her head versus, you know, putting this imaginary person on a pedestal and almost like drawing out what this perfect person is going to look like. I feel like that
Mhm.
really messes us up the same way
Hmm.
talking to somebody for too long on a dating
On
app
an app.
messes us up
Yep.
and fucks with
Yes.
our expectations.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. It's yes, exactly. I think what Natasha mentioned about love being conditional is really important. I
Mm-hmm.
think love with a partner should be conditional. I don't think it should be unconditional. The only unconditional love you should have is the love that you have with your mama and she has with you, and then the love that you have with your children or your nieces and nephews. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else has conditions.
Yeah.
And some of those can be physical attraction. It just depends, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's just logical. It's one of those things where like ego and logic are actually really important to
Mm-hmm.
defend you
Yeah,
and to make sure you're safe.
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
What came to mind for me with like, I agree, we have seen love happen in the pods without them seeing each other. That connection is there. I think
Mhm.
my response to my own question would be love is blind, but sometimes love isn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
that goes
Yeah.
for everything and everyone in every situation. Like, no matter how much you want to make something work, sometimes even if, you know, you're in the pods, you fall in love, you see each other in person, you're attracted to each other, it's not always enough.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Usually isn't
Mhm.
enough. Love
Yeah.
is cute and
Yeah.
all, but it's yeah. Cute's not
A
gonna
little
get you
more
down the
to it.
aisle. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you think giving an ultimatum is
Oh
ever
my god.
actually a good idea?
Oh my god. We
Ooh.
talked about this. So we recapped
We
we
did.
recapped queer love, and that was one of the big
Queer
questions we talked about. Um oh man, what did I say?
I don't remember either.
Yeah.
You know what? I remember having a lot of questions about the difference between an ultimatum and a boundary. I think those two get really confusing with people. And especially even when I watch the ultimatum, even with people like Yoli and Mal, I'm like, wait, did you have a boundary or did you just want a certain type of person? Do you want this type of like it just got so confusing with that show.
Mm-hmm.
Um but I don't think an ultimatum is ever a good idea because you are not, I think, Natasha, I think you said this, you're not one foot out the door. Like, you if you want an ultimatum, you just want the person to change. And the only way that person's going to change is if they want to, not if you want them to.
Mm.
They're always going to resent you. It's always followed up by resentment.
Yeah. I don't see how
Yeah.
it wouldn't be followed up with some
Yeah.
subtle resentment. And yeah, I agree. I don't know if ultimatum is the answer. It feels kind of like pushing someone over the ledge to do something that they probably don't want to do. And then you're going to always question their motivation. What was the genuine motivation? Was it the ultimatum? Was it from your own heart? I think we saw it in definitely this season of Queer Love with Mal and Yoli. Mal at the end proposed. And as I was watching it, I was like, you sure, Mal? Like, I don't think you actually want this. You just don't want to lose Yoli. And so just the question of motivation then will always haunt you. So I don't think the person even giving the ultimatum is going to be happy in the end, even if the person gives them what they want.
I also got to imagine it probably does not feel good to give an ultimatum.
No,
yeah,
it can't.
That must feel terrible.
Yeah. That's I don't wish that on anyone.
Yeah, me either. Do you really think it is possible to fall in love in 6 weeks?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I'd say yes, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I fell in love with my husband in maybe like 3-4 weeks. I remember looking back at my journal and like the first mention in I journal almost like every day. I'm like an avid journaler. And so when we were falling in love, I was like heavy journaling the whole experience. And I think it was like 3 weeks in was like the first mention of love. Like, I think I'm falling in love with this person. So I'm definitely, yes, love can happen very quickly. I definitely am a huge believer in that.
How did you meet your husband?
On Hinge. Good old Hinge.
Hey.
Yep. Came through.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned the journal thing. I wish that I had journaled. I write lists of everything. Like I probably have like 30,000 notes in my phone with like every single thought. I guess what I think it's a journal, but I wish I like actually journaled regularly about my feelings because I know I told my dog when I first thought I was in love with my fiance, but I don't know when that was. Like, my dog can't tell me.
Can't
like,
tell you.
You said you love Jake. Like on this day, here's what you said about him. So I wish I had that to look back on. So I love that you have that. That's really special.
Yeah, thanks.
My last question for you, and my favorite question to ask: what is the best piece of dating or relationship advice you've ever received or have to give?
Mine, I think, is from my mom. And she said that marriage is a covenant between two forgivers. You have to forgive all the time. And you can't be too proud to forgive your spouse for whatever all the time.
I love that. That's so true.
That is true. It is a lot of forgiveness on both sides all the time. I think for me, so I did a lot of online dating. I eventually met my husband on a dating app. And I think I really got to a place where I just put expectations like out the window, and I was treating each date as like just a new opportunity to have a conversation with someone. I think once you get to that understanding of like, this is not like, I think subconsciously, yes, we're all hunting for our husbands and wives, but if you take that expectation off and it's like, I'm just going out to have a conversation, I'm just going to sit and meet this new person and talk with them, and you really dumb it down to that, it takes so much pressure off. It makes it more enjoyable. And I think it took me a lot of years and a lot of first dates of doing that before I got to a space of, when I met my husband, I kind of showed up for the date and I was very like, what's your name? Where are you from? Like, even the energy I brought was like maybe a little harsh, but it was just, I just want to have a conversation with this person. I don't know who he is. I don't want to build him up to be anything. And I think that was when I was enjoying dating the most, when I got to that level of like keeping the expectations like all the way low.
It's definitely hard to get there, but I think it
Mhm.
is so empowering when you do have that
Mhm.
mindset shift. It makes it fun, it makes it
Mhm.
easy,
Yep.
and like you said, it takes the pressure off. So I love
Mhm.
that, and I'm glad you
Mhm.
got there, and that's how it happened for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you guys so much for being here. This has been so much fun. Where can
Yeah.
everybody find
Thank
you?
you.
Where can everyone find the show? And what are you covering next?
Yeah. Thanks for having us. This was really
Yes.
fun.
So fun.
Yeah, you can find us on all podcast platforms. We put out an
Mhm.
episode every week. We, as I said, just finished wrapping up Swiping America. We are doing a rewatch of Insecure right now, just for fun.
Ooh, love that.
It's on Netflix now, so you can watch it. We're going to be diving into probably the Ultimatum. New season is coming up soon.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then we do a ton of bonus content on Patreon. So we do weekly Bachelorette recaps. On Patreon, we this week are talking like Love Island and Real Housewives of New York. Just a lot of fun, really fun episodes. And that's patreon.com/2 Black Girls 1 Rose. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, all over the place. Two
Mhm.
Black Girls 1 Rose.
Amazing. Thank you both so, so much. And I will have all of that linked in the show notes. You guys, I appreciate this so much. Thank you for coming on. To everyone who listened, send this to your reality TV loving best friend who needs to hear it. Send it to the group chat, share it on your story. There's so much in here that I'm so excited for everyone to hear. So let's get it out there. I'll talk to you
Awesome.
guys later.
Bye.
Bye.